Dear colleagues, thank you very much for the opportunity to exchange. Thank you for the invitation from the Federal Senate of Brazil. Thank you for the invitation from LegisTech and the opportunity to address this thematic today about the cost, the environmental cost of generative AI. So, as we deliberate on the role of generative artificial intelligence in public services, infrastructure, and education, and beyond, it is imperative we confront its environmental implications and, equally important, chart a path toward mitigation. The energy, carbon, water, and material costs of artificial intelligence are real, but so too are the opportunities to reduce them. Below, I present a structural narrative grounded in data and concrete use cases which can serve as a factual backbone of policy recommendations. First, let us scale. According to the International Energy Agency, electricity demand for data centers is projected to more than double by 2030, reaching around 1,000 terawatt globally, which most of that increase is driven by artificial intelligence workloads. In 2025, Deloitte forecasts that data centers will consume roughly 2% of global electricity, around 500 terawatt, and that figure could rise over 1,000 terawatt within a few years if AI-driven growth continues unchecked. When we look specifically at model training, the carbon footprint is striking. For example, training GPT-3 and 4, which are around 180 billion parameters, consume approximately 1.3 megawatt of electricity and yield about 500 metric tons of carbon equivalent. Estimates of the carbon footprint for training GPT-4 as high as 12,000 to 14,000 tons of CO2 when run on standard US grid. And the same source highlights that if instead such training had been done in a low carbon grid region such as Eastern Canada, emissions might have been as low as 1,000 or 1,300 metric tons of carbon equivalent. On the inference side, that is the cost of answering queries. Studies estimate that a single ChatGPT interaction can emit about 4.3 grams of carbon equivalent. Over millions or billions of such interactions, the total becomes consequential. Thus, generative AI is no peripheral consumer. It is becoming a core driver for energy demand. This growth presents risks to grids, emission targets, and water use for cooling unless mitigating. Our mitigation strategy must therefore be holistic, addressing every layer of the ecosystem from the sustainability of infrastructure and efficiency of models to the way institutions deploy artificial intelligence and the choices made by individual users. To begin, the foundation must be green. Data centers that power generative AI should run on renewable energy. In 2024, Microsoft committed to produce 10 gigawatts of renewable energy and by 2030 to power its data centers. Some AI-focused data centers already operate on 100% renewable energy using solar, wind, or grid-backed renewable sourcing. Cooling is another major lever. Some data centers are locating themselves in cool climates, such as in Northern Europe, to minimize mechanical cooling energy use. Meta's facility in Luleå in Sweden is a case in point. Even so, heat reuse should be prioritized compared to locating in a cold zone. In addition, power demand flexibility is emerging as a tool. In August 2025, Google agreed to agreements with 2 US utilities, Indiana Michigan Power and Tennessee Power Authority, that allows its AI centers to scale back power consumption during periods of grid stress. This is a demand response measure. The data center voluntarily reduces load so as not to overload the grid. Hardware efficiency also plays a role. Deploying special chips designed specially for AI workloads can drastically cut energy use per operations, while a stronger focus on recycling rare earth material will help reduce the environmental footprint of hardware production, even if quasi-inexistent nowadays. We cannot rely solely on brute force growth in ever larger models to deliver sustainable artificial intelligence. Efficiency in architecture and training practices must be a central principle. Instead of deploying large general-purpose systems for every task, a parliament can increasingly turn to smaller, specialized models tailored to its own domain of work. In some cases, a well-trained domain-specific model will not only save energy, but also deliver more relevant and accurate results. For example, a compact model trained on the Parliament's legislative corpus, such as some of them have been demonstrated by our colleagues from Italy and Monica, could support assistance in comparing amendments, drafting short procedural notes, or answering well-defined questions about parliamentary rules, tasks that do not require the depth or breadth of a frontier-scale model, whether the use of such an AI solution is justified. Another important design choice is the selection of the model size. Not every parliamentary use case requires the power of a very large language model. For daily operations, such as providing multilingual access to archival records, generating summaries of committee reports, or retrieving past debates, a medium or small model can perform effectively while consuming only a fraction of the energy of a very large one. Larger models should be reserved for situations where advanced reasoning, contextual interpretation, or creative synthesis are indispensable. For instance, anticipating cross-policy impacts of new legislation, preparing comparative analysis across different jurisdictions, or simulating citizen perspectives during foresight exercises. By calibrating model size to the complexity of the task, the Parliament can significantly reduce both its costs and its environmental footprint, while still ensuring that intelligence is available at the right level when needed. Efficiency can also be reinforced by the methods used during training. Techniques such as model distillation, pruning, and quantization allow developers to shrink models without losing essential accuracy. Transfer learning offers another important pathway once potential bias have been assessed. Instead of training new models from scratch, existing backbones can be adapted to the parliamentary context with relatively little computational effort. This could mean fine-tuning a medium-sized language model on multilingual parliamentary debates rather than commissioning the training of an entirely new large model. Finally, life cycle management should become a guiding principle. Too often, new versions of AI models are released simply for the sake of novelty. In the parliamentary context, this is a risk of wasting both resources and institutional attention. By reusing and refining existing architectures, especially those already adapted to legislative and archival materials, the institution can avoid repeated expenditure and vast amounts of energy while maintaining high level of performance, transparency, and trustworthiness. Not every request merits a large, deep model. A key principle is routing. It was mentioned already in several presentations yesterday that you need to adapt the right level of answers to the right level of question. Trivial or factual queries, such as looking up an address or retrieving stored data, should default to classical IT systems, such as relational databases, caching, and search engines. Generative AI should be reserved for tasks requiring creativity, reasoning, or natural language context. Enterprises can deploy response caching, Once a question and its AI answer are generated, store them and reuse instead of regenerating each time. For public services with repeated queries such as, how do I visit the Parliament? This reduces repeated model invocation. Offering users an eco mode displaying the environmental impacts, short answers generated via smaller models or fewer computational layers can reduce emissions further. Users who want richer answers can opt into a full mode. Governance, accountability, and standards are the next key points. Transparency is vital. National or supranational regulation could require AI vendors to publish carbon, energy, and water use metrics for their models, both for training and for average inference. This should be verifiable, audited, and comparable across providers. Procurement policies in government could favor AI offerings with lower embedded carbon or better negative carbon claims. This gives a market incentive for sustainable AI. However, it should be kept in mind that a system that is energetically integrated with its environment is better than a system powered by renewable energy transferred from other sectors. Standards should be developed. Think about Energy Star for AI model, for instance, so that models can be certified on energy per query, carbon per answer, or water use for cooling. Public institutions and parliaments are well placed to foster or demand these certification frameworks. Even the best infrastructure cannot prevent waste if misuse is rampant. Users need training and awareness. Not every sentence can be or must be generated by a large model. Encourage workflows where AI augments human work, not replaces simple lookups. Use segmentation approach when designing solutions to identify appropriate tasks to augment the most positive use cases. Encourage prompt precision, clear and exact instructions to reduce repeated retries or ambiguous expansions that cause commute. Strategic hybrid architectures combining traditional systems with AI selectively ensure that generative AI is used only where it adds value. Within the European Union, several regulation measures and industry initiatives already illustrate how the environmental footprint of data centers and AI can be addressed. These cases provide a strong foundation for parliamentary deliberation and policy making. A first example is a delegated regulation EU 2024-1364 adopted under the revised Energy Efficiency Directive. It requires data centers with an IT load above 500 kilowatt to report on their energy and environmental performance, including metrics such as power usage effectiveness, water usage, renewable energy share, and heat reuse. The information must be transmitted to a European database with the first deadline by September 2024. This is the first EU-wide mandatory framework that forces operators to disclose their environmental footprint and pave the way for future legislative action at both union and national level. Complementing regulation, the European Code of Conduct for Energy Efficiency in Data Centers, launched by the European Commission Joint Research Centre in Italy, remains a voluntary but influential framework. More than 500 data centers across Europe have subscribed to its best practices, which include energy monitoring, efficient cooling, and equipment lifecycle management. Participants demonstrating leadership can also be recognized through annual awards, helping to disseminate successful approaches across the continent. In parallel, the private sector has committed itself through the Climate Neutral Data Center Pact, signed by major European and global operators such as Google, Microsoft, AWS, and Meta. The pact sets clear sustainability targets, 100% renewable or carbon-free energy used by 2025 in cool climates and by 2030 elsewhere. ambitious power usage effectiveness thresholds, and systematic waste heat reuse. Importantly, signatories that fail to meet these globals can be removed, making this a self-regulatory scheme with real accountability. At the member state level, Germany's Energieeffizienzgesetz illustrates how EU obligations translate into national law. It imposes renewable energy requirements on data centers above 300 kilowatts, 50% today, 100% by 27 for new data centers, and mandatory use of waste heat. Other member states, including Denmark and Poland, have tested technical solutions such as airflow optimization and computational free dynamic modeling in pilot data centers, which have led to measurable improvements in cooling efficiency and energy reuse. A further relevant development is a European Interoperability Act under the Regulation 2024-1681, adopted in November 24, which creates a binding framework for digital interoperability across EU public administrations. Its provisions require member states and EU institutions to ensure that digital services and data are reusable, accessible, and interoperable across borders. For artificial intelligence, this has two important implications. First, it reinforces the need to design AI systems in parliaments-based and open standards and interoperable data models rather than siloed or proprietary solutions. Second, it creates a strong incentive to develop medium-sized, domain-specific AI models that can operate seamlessly with datasets shared between EU institutions and national parliaments. In practice, this means that an AI tool developed for legislative analysis in the European Commission could be more easily adapted for use in the European Parliament, reducing duplication, cutting environmental costs, and ensuring coherence in democratic processes across the Union. Together, these examples demonstrate the range of instruments available: binding EU-level reporting obligations, voluntary best practices frameworks, private sector pacts with real compliance mechanisms, and national transposition measures. For parliaments, they underline both the feasibility and necessity of combining regulatory oversight with industry engagement. They also show that environmental sustainability can be mainstreamed into AI and digital infrastructure policy without impeding innovation. Indeed, efficiency gains often lead to cost savings as well as climate benefits. To conclude, generative AI brings powerful capabilities, but without careful mitigation, it becomes an environmental liability. In the context of national governance and public sector uses, the path forward must be integrated into renewable powered infrastructure, or even better, integrated with its environment. Efficient model design, smart operational orchestration, robust governance, and standards and user-level awareness. For a parliament, I would recommend 4 immediate actions. Condition public AI contracts on energy efficiency or renewable energy sourcing, creating market pressure for a greener AI. Sponsor or support the development of national or regional green AI certification, leveraging existing models and tools such as LLM, carbon, or green algorithms. Strengthen the role of IT enterprise architecture in solution design by enforcing operational efficiency principles, ensuring that new digital and AI systems are architected with minimal resource consumption, optimal workload routing, and integration of classical IT components where they are more efficient than generative AI. And launch awareness and training initiatives for members, assistants, and public servants to promote responsible use of AI, encouraging precision in prompts, selective use of generative models, and an understanding of the environmental footprint of everyday digital choices. With these levers in place, generative AI can be safely integrated into national strategy and public services without permitting its environmental footprint to spiral out of control. Thank you.